Hello, sir.
Hi, sports fans.
Hi, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
Hat. Nice hat.
Thank you. Well, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
I'm wearing this in honor of you and Christmas. So
Yeah.
I was gonna tell you, but I got busy. I was gonna text you and say, bring your Santa Claus hat. But
There.
see, I knew it. Yes, yes.
Are you kidding me?
All right.
Are you kidding me? Of course.
I knew it.
And we didn't plan this. I
No.
happened to have this here, and I said,
Unbelievable.
should I put this on or not? And
Okay, so this clip now has to be in.
Unbelievable. Okay, now you got to keep this. It's recording, right? What will we discover tonight with Michael? Tune in.
I am an open book. You can ask me
geez.
anything
Wow.
because
Okay.
I've given tons of interviews and podcasts about the birth of the home computer, what it means to be a Commodorean, a little bit about the future, although I put a lot into my new book, which hasn't been talked about only in one podcast. So I talk about what I think is happening in the future ad infinitum. And also you can ask me anything about my personal life, because at 76, I feel more like 46. My medical profile is like I have a normal EKG, low blood pressure, and no calcium in my veins. So, and I have this kind of frivolous behavior, which keeps me young. Women I've been dating say I'm a teenager. They tell me I'm like 76. I'm like a teenager, but I think it's probably true.
Yeah.
I'm having so much fun. Look,
I could tell.
I think it's time to have. You should always have fun in your life,
Hey,
whatever age you are, wherever you are in your life, whether you're successful or not. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Michael. How's it going?
Thanks for sending me the link.
Yeah, surprise.
Okay, I tuned on. I saw Dr. Obsoleto in his Christmas hat, and I laughed my head off. And then he said something about, yeah, if you had a hat, you could put it on. And it just so happens the last thing I did before I signed on was I asked myself, should I put on this silly hat? And here we are.
That's a good idea. It's fun.
It's a Christmas podcast, which we should make this a gift to all the fans and friends and family that tune in. We should make this as fun as we possibly can, and informative and insightful and all that stuff too.
Yeah. How have you been? It's been a while.
2 months ago, I would have said that I was about a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, and right now I'm more like an 8.5 or 9.
Well, that's good.
A company that I helped found was forced to close due to a sudden rule change by the government. There was no recourse, so we had to.
Which one was that?
FEXD. It was a public company, fintech company called Fintech Ecosystem Development Corp. And the government said any SPAC, it's a special purpose acquisition company, any SPAC that doesn't complete its SPAC procedures in 3 years has to shut down and be delisted from the stock exchange. So 2 things happened as a result of that. One is we decided to start a new SPAC, which we're going to start later this month or January latest, and we're going to do a lot of the things we would have done with the old SPAC.
Okay.
We have a super app that lets you use your smartphone to send money overseas, make payments overseas, send money to your family, exchange information, all kinds of things. And if you're an unbanked person in a third world country and you don't live near a bank branch, you can use our smartphone app to do your banking. And that's very important because in some countries, 40% of the people do not live near a bank, but 90-some% own a smartphone or have access to a smartphone. So using a smartphone for banking in third world countries is a big deal, and we're tapping into that and we want people that use advanced financial technologies, which is called fintech, to improve their lives and meet their financial goals, however small or large those may be. So that's what we're trying to do with our fintech venture, and that was shut down a couple months ago by a government rule change, and now we're going to restart it with a different name, and we're going to restart it probably in January. And then we have another venture. What?
Oh, I was just saying hi.
No. We have another venture, which is a blockchain venture called Toy Chain. And this is we have a patent on a method for scaling blockchain, which blockchain record keeping is not scalable, because the more burden you put on the network, the slower and more expensive and energy consuming it becomes. So what we've done, we have a patent on a system and a platform, which we call Toy Chain, TOI, which allows you to scale blockchain, which not only allows us to issue crypto coins, which we'll do at the beginning of the year, but also allows us to license our technology platform to, you know, other industries like real estate, confirming election results, things like that. So I have two ventures that are going to be very active in the beginning of 2025. And I also just published my book, which is called Neo Innovation. And I'm working on an autobiography. And along the way, two publishers said they love the first 5 chapters. Can I please hurry up and finish it so they can see the full manuscript? So I have two publishers interested in my autobiography. So that tells you what I'm doing, and I'm on a roll. And I'm doing some ocean fishing. I'm writing a series of articles for Embedded, which is a newsletter by Mauricio Di Paolo, and doing a series of articles on future technologies like humanoid robots and self-driving cars and brain-computer interfaces, things like that. So I'm very active. I'm having fun, enjoying life.
Yeah.
And
well, welcome back, Michael. We, you could tell, we've already started the discussion. But it's great to have you here. Thank you so much. Very busy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's 3 minutes past, so I think we could get started. If you haven't already, please subscribe to TPUG on YouTube. We have also a very active Discord channel. Please subscribe to TPUG and subscribe to Man Behind the Machine podcast on iTunes. We'll be airing some segments from this interview that started a while ago on Man Behind the Machine, so you could find excerpts on there as well. And then one more thing, if you haven't already seen Michael's interview with me 2 years ago, has it been that long, Michael? Wow.
oh my God, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, time flies. If you haven't seen that already, take a look at that. Now, I'm not going to toot your horn or anything, number one, but people have told me out of all the interviews that I've done for TPUG, you're they're their favorite one. No disrespect to any of the other guests, but people loved that your time with us 2 years ago, and they always ask, you know, hey, Dr. Obsoleto, when are you going to bring Michael back? Okay, don't worry, we got something going on. With that said, we didn't plan the Christmas hats. When I contacted Michael 6 months ago to follow up with him about this interview, I was going to tell him, Michael, well, 6 months ago, so it was like, you know, middle of summer. Say, Michael, can we wear Christmas hats? So what happened, Michael, when you logged on the call?
I logged on, I saw you with your hat. I left my head off, and then you said, it's too bad you couldn't wear a hat. I was going to ask you to wear a hat, and I said, you won't believe it. The last thing I did before I signed on was I put the hat next to me. I said, maybe it's too silly if I put the hat on. So you said the hat, and I just put it on. So here we are. This is a Christmas interview. So, and we're not going to be super serious, by the way. We'll be informative. No. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but don't expect us to be too serious.
So, no, not too serious. So I have to say,
anyway, here's just to everybody in Canada and everybody who's watching anywhere in the world. And I love TPUG. I love the Canadian users, and I have fans and friends all over Canada. And the nicest thing about Canada is whenever I go there, people ordered 2 beers at a time. And I could never figure out why people always order 2 beers at a time. And then is the waitressing too slow and you don't know when you get the second one? But one thing I remember, whenever I go to Canada, whoever I'm with, they always go, okay, they say, we'll have a beer. And then 2 beers come to each of us. And I don't know why that is, but I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, great. Now,
Oh,
Michael, I know we're talking about your new book, Neo Innovation.
yes.
This is the first. He has only talked about parts of it on another podcast. So this is going to be the most in-depth look into this new book. Now, you have to forgive me. I do have to ask you some Commodore questions. I mean,
Start there.
so I want to start there. Forgive me if I repeat myself, but in terms of legacy reflection, looking back, what do you think made the VIC-20 such a revolutionary product in the early personal computing era?
Well, it had so many firsts. Okay, first of all, the home computer revolution was a pregnant market just waiting for the right price performance machine to come out and jumpstart the home computer revolution, and that was the VIC-20. And one of the nice things about the VIC-20 was that we had a chip called the video interface chip, and one of the young interns at MOS Technology, our semiconductor division, had put together a prototype to show what could be done, and they were gonna show the prototype to Atari to try to sell the chip to Atari, but Atari didn't want it, Mattel didn't want it, nobody wanted it, TI. So Jack Tramiel knew that this existed, so then he wanted it, and he was very, very firm in what he wanted to do. Now, to make a long story short, when I was working in San Francisco as general manager of a small company that did special effects for movies and video games, and Atari was a client. They gave us a machine. Everybody fell in love with a game called Star Raiders, and we all started playing with it. I got hooked. I said, if I'm going to be hooked, everybody's going to be hooked. I'm quitting my job and going into the home computer industry. So I was a former journalist, so I started writing articles and to teach myself about home computing. So I got to know Jobs and Wozniak at Apple by writing some articles about them. They gave me a job offer, and then I went to Atari and I got a job offer there. And with those 2 jobs in my pocket, I went to see Jack Tramiel at Commodore, and that's how I wound up at Commodore. But there's an interesting backstory to this. When I was in the Army, I only worked for generals. I was a captain in the Army, and I worked for general officers in headquarters, 3 years on active duty. And the reason I always worked for generals is because wherever I landed, wherever I was assigned, I never stayed at the unit where I was supposed to go. I immediately marched to the headquarters and found somebody in charge and said, hey, I should be working here. And they all said, why? And I said, well, because I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, I can give presentations, and I'm really good, and you really need me. And you know what they said every time? They said the same thing. They said, oh, okay. Just like that. So I always worked for generals, and when everybody else came in and snapped to attention to the general, I always sauntered in and said, hey, General, how's it going? How can I help you do something? And it was like that. So I was used to doing that. So when I had these job offers, I felt that I had Apple's offer and Atari's offer in my pocket. So I would go, just like I did in the Army, and go to Jack Tramiel and ask for a job. And the reason I did this is because at the time I felt that Apple had too many geniuses and I would be lost in the crowd, which was probably true. And then Atari didn't have enough geniuses, and they lost about $1 billion in 5 years. So that was a good call on my part. And then Commodore had, if you excuse my language, half geniuses and half idiots. And the idiots were clueless and they were screwing everything up. So when I went to see Jack, Jack asked me, what I thought, and I said, there's about 20 things wrong with your company that I can help you with. The packaging is 1940s styles. Your advertising sucks. The user groups hate you. You have the best hardware, but nobody knows it. Your PR is screwed up. And I went on and on and on. And Jack said, oh, let me think about it. So the next day, he hired me as assistant to the president and marketing strategist. And I said, can I be marketing strategist too? And he said, yes. And so I became assistant to the president and marketing strategist. To make a long story short, my first day was in London at the first international Commodore managers meeting. About 21 people were there. And Chuck Peddle, who was a senior engineer, had an Apple clone, had like a color version of the Commodore PET. And it was exactly the form factor of the Apple II. It was exactly, it looked like an Apple II. If you didn't know, you think it was an Apple II. Oh, and he was pushing that, the color PET. And Jack listened to that and he said, I don't want that. I want an introductory computer. We don't have that. What we might call a game computer, I guess. And he had seen the prototype that Bob Yanis at MOS Technology did as a school project as an intern at MOS, and he said, I think we can make that. And he said, I'm going to go away and you talk about it. So we talked about it overnight. The next day, Jack came back. He listened to all the arguments in favor and against the small computer as opposed to the Apple type computer, and I was one of the only like 4 people out of 20 that championed the small computer, because I said, hey, intro computer, get somebody into the computers at home, in elementary schools that can't afford, poor school districts, get those people into computing. Then they'll buy the Commodore PET in school. And then when they graduate, they'll use the Commodore business systems. And that's just a natural thing. And I was a marketing strategist, so that's what we were talking about. And when Jack heard all the arguments, he stood up and he said, he looked around and everybody was mostly in favor of not doing the small computer. And he pounded his fist on the desk and he glared at everybody and he said, gentlemen, the Japanese are coming, so we will become the Japanese. And then he said, I want to make computers for the masses, not the classes. Beautiful. So to make a long story short, I did a long memo. I threw it on his desk. I said, here's what should be done with a new computer. I drew a happy face with a beard and a mustache on the front. That was the cover page of the memo, a beard and a happy face, bearded happy face. And a week later, after showing the memo around, Jack came back, threw it on my desk, and he said, here, I told everybody involved in this computer, they can't do anything with the computer unless they clear it with you. You're in charge. But none of these people report to you. They're all older than you. You're going to have to do it through persuasion and a little bit my authority. And I said, I can do that. And then then we started working with Japan, because our American engineers didn't want to work on this. Oh. So a lot of it had to be done by Yash Terakura and Tony Tokai, the general manager in Japan, who I had gotten to know in London. So I went to Japan and we did a lot of coordinating together in Japan. And in fact, the VIC was introduced in Japan at Seibu Department Store in 1980, September 1980. But in the meantime, we decided to call it the VIC. And then VIC sounds like a truck driver. So I said, I should put a number there. So I called it the VIC-20. And Jack said, why do you call it 20? And I said, because 20 is a friendly number. And Vic sounds like a truck driver. Jack just nodded and said, okay, just like that. It was so cool. And then one day I said, can I be the Vic product manager? Because I'm already doing the job. I was hiring a product team that I call the Vic Commandos, which were 18 and 20 something year olds who were self-taught machine level and assembly language programmers. That's what was needed to convert old PET games port them over to the PET, and then license some games. And that's how we were, and utility software like mortgage calculators and stuff. So we needed a little core of software, and those programmers were needed. So to make a long story short, one day I said, Jack, can I be product manager? And he said, no, I don't believe in product managers. I said, you don't believe in product managers. So what can I be? He said, you can be the Vic Czar. I said, Vic
That's
Czar,
awesome.
like Russian Czar. And he just looked at me and said, yes. And I said, this is so funny. You should have been there. I said,
Oh my gosh. I wish I was there.
I said, can I put that on my business card? He said, sure. So for several weeks, I had a business card that said Vic Czar. And then another thing that happened was I told him that the marketing department sucks. So he said, go look at him and tell me what you think. There were 12 people in the marketing department. So I went to the marketing department, went to Jack. Went to the marketing department, went to Jack. The person who had the customer cards, the data, basically all the data on the customers that ever bought a Commodore computer, guess what she had done 2 days before I got there? She had thrown them all out. So
Oh my God.
customer that ever bought a Commodore computer that was on little cards that we could have contacted them, it was trashed. And I was
What an idiot.
I was livid. Also, all of the software contracts for all of the software for the pet computer had lapsed, which meant that if they found out that we were doing a hot new computer, they would raise the royalties and we would lose money just from that. So I was really ticked. Also, there were other things happening. One person had a sinus condition, but the spray that he used to solve his sinus condition had a white powder that is actually illegal. And there were lots of things going on like that you just can't imagine. So I went back and I told Jack, and I went to Jack marketing lunch. Came back from lunch, all 12 offices are empty. I went to the receptionist, I said, hey, where's all the marketing department? And she's writing on a yellow notepad, and she looks up and says, oh, Jack came back and fired them. I said, Jack fired the marketing department.
Yes.
And I ran into Jack's office. I said, Jack, what happened? You fired the marketing department? And you know what he said? His exact words. Yeah, you said you didn't like him. So I fired him. That's what he said. He didn't mean that, but that's exactly what he said. That's the way he talked. And that was our relationship. So I said, so now what? So he said, well, you're going to be the interim marketing director. Okay, you go hire the marketing department, and I'll hire a marketing vice president, and that's how we'll split the job up. And in the meantime, you do everything. So I contacted all the editors of magazines that I had been writing articles for, and I managed to secure the back page of every computer magazine and electronics magazine at the time. So it looked like we owned the freaking magazine, because when you picked up a magazine, you saw a Commodore ad on the back cover. And I thought that was brilliant. And that's the kind of thing I was doing at that time. And he also said, you're the only person in the company beside me that has carte blanche to give interviews to anybody you want, because I trust you and you're a former journalist. And that was it.
Amazing.
The rest is history. We launched the VIC-20 in January CES, January 1981. The VIC, I fought for a lot of features like full programmable function keys. I saw a prototype of an NEC computer in Japan that had programmable function keys. It hadn't been introduced yet, so we stole that idea and we put that in, and we put an RS-232 and an IEEE and a lot of other things. And I insisted on full-size typewriter keys, although everybody wanted membrane keys, which I told them I just won't accept that.
Good.
And so I fought for a lot of things, and the bottom line, and I negotiated some software contracts with Scott Adams. I bought Scott Adams Adventure Games and put them on cartridge because they were easy to program and they were mostly text. So we could put that on cartridge, and the VIC had small memory. Anyway, the bottom line was it sold 1 million units. It became the first computer of any kind to sell 1 million units. And then I did a VIC modem. I said, we need a modem so we can go on CompuServe, because we have 1 million users and they're all calling us on the phone asking us questions. And why don't we get the users talking to each other on some kind of a network? So I formed something called the Commodore Information Network. I contracted a modem outside because our engineers didn't have time to work on it. And I said, I want a $99 computer. So the engineers did a computer, and then they didn't know how to do it because it was an acoustic modem. And finally, one day, I came back to my hotel room at a convention. They were camped out in front of the door, and they said, Michael, we just can't do it for that price because the cradle of the phone has to fit in these cups and they're very expensive. And I said, why can't I go in a cartridge like Direct Connect? We have it to RS-232. And they went, oh my God. And then they ran off down the hallway like meerkats. And I sketched a little cartridge. I said, put here's like a memory cartridge or a game cartridge. Put the modem on a cartridge. And they ran off down the hall, and the next day they had it. So we had a $99 modem, which became the first modem to sell 1 million units, and we became the largest seller of modems in the world. So that's my claim to fame. And as a result of that, 4 years later, Jack and Irving had a dispute. Jack left the company. He bought Atari. He made Atari a family company run by his sons. Atari had been losing money, and in 6 months, he turned it around into a profitable enterprise. It was run pretty much as a family business for several years. And I didn't go to Atari because that was a family business, and I didn't really have a role there. So I went on with my career, and I did other things. I wrote my book, The Home Computer Wars, which tells the story. I gave some convention speeches. I formed a consulting company. I was a vice president at Cigna for a year, which was really easy and profitable, but boring. And so that I became a consultant for 10 years, and I had my own company. And then I wound up at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And I was invited to go there and help launch the Emerging Technologies program. And for 18 years, I was the managing director of innovation research programs at Wharton. And the Mac Institute, the Mac Center, the Emerging Technologies program, I was the managing director of that. I worked with the faculty and with our industry partners. And our role was to develop new best practices and strategies for designing and promoting radical and disruptive technologies. And that's what we did. And so I learned about the process of innovation. And now fast forward to last year, and during the pandemic, I noticed everything had changed in the field of innovation because I was involved in a fintech venture and a blockchain venture. And a lot of things we were doing were different from anything that had ever been done before. So I said, this is like the neo world. And I said, the neo world is everything that's changed since the pandemic. We date online. We work online. We meet online instead of in offices. We do all kinds of things. If you finished your work fast before the pandemic, what happened to you? You got more work because you finished it faster than anyone, and you got more work. After the pandemic, if you finished your work faster, you got time off as a reward. It was a whole change in how we do things. And the way I describe what my new book is about and what my thinking is about now, if you take the prefix neo, N-E-O, and you put it in front of any word, you can describe and get a sense for what the future is. Neo, if you say medicine and you put neo in front of medicine and you say neo medicine, what is it? It's easy. It's gene therapy. It's training the immune system to fight certain diseases. It's nano-sizing cancer-fighting drugs that are too big to go through a cell wall. But if you nano-size that same molecule, you can send cancer-fighting drugs directly through the wall of the cell because nanosize fits through the wall of the cell, and they can kill the tumors. And if you attach a signaling protein, which is like a little nanobot, the protein will guide the cancer-fighting cell to the tumor area, to the tumor site, and it knows where it's supposed to go and what it's supposed to do. And you can do that with proteins now. It's really cool. That's neo-medicine. And if you describe neo-dating, it means dating online. Think about this. Okay, I'm dating now. I'm past 70 and I'm dating, which is cool because I feel like I'm more like in my early 40s. Before the pandemic, if you wanted to meet your future wife, not all people, but most people went to bars and took a chance on hoping that their ideal partner, number one, drank alcohol, Number two, happened to be at the bar the night you were there. And that's how you met people. That's like silly. And now we go online and we have filters and chats and we get to know people and we find out what their hobbies are and we know all about them and we have connections. We have ubiquitous connectivity. And not only can we connect with people, we can connect with people anywhere where they are in the world. So your perfect partner may be in another country and you don't know it, but now you can find out, and now it's easy to find out because you just go on an online dating site, you know. So these are some of the things that are happening in the neo, what I call the neo world. And then if you look at the technologies that are emerging that are already redefining the future, you can look at humanoid robots, generative AI, self-driving cars, brain-computer interfaces. These are some of the things I talk about in my book, and I'm also writing a series of articles about that right now, and I'm doing a lot of thinking and brainstorming about where those things are going to lead, and I'm trying to express that and share that generally so that anyone out there who's involved in innovation that wants to be involved in these things can get a sense of where it should be going, and I'm trying to share that with people, and that's what my role in life is right now, sharing with people ideas for what the potential is. And you're welcome to ask me any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a perfect lead-in. So in your book, Neo Innovation, you describe these strategies for the post-pandemic Neo world. Could you elaborate on the most critical mindset shifts innovators need to adopt?
Well, I actually wrote the book. I was going to write a very thick book, like an innovation book about all kinds of things, and I decided to make it a handbook. So it's more of a how-to book for post-pandemic innovators. So for one thing, if you're going to innovate anything, what's the purpose of innovation? Purpose of innovation is to solve a problem that needs to be solved, or to exploit an opportunity, like an idea for a company or a venture or something, which may solve a problem that nobody knew could be solved, like smartphone. Who knew we needed some smartphones? Now we couldn't live without them. So there's a little what we call sense-making framework that helps to conceptualize innovation. I learned about sense-making frameworks the first day I was at the Wharton School. I was standing in the hallway, and one of the professors named Sid Winter was talking to somebody about something, and I wanted to make myself look smart because it was my first day on the job, and then I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I said in the middle of the conversation, trying to sound smart, I said, "Oh, that's a very nice business model." And Sid looked at me. He kind of glared at me and said, "Michael, that's not a business model. A business model is a formal thing. It's a formal, structured thing." And I said, "So what were you describing? What is it?" And he said, "That's a sense-making framework." And from that minute on, I embraced the concept of sense-making frameworks. Whenever you're solving a problem or tackling a job or doing anything, you should try to find a sense-making framework to help you understand it. So there are two sense-making frameworks in my book. One of them was developed originally by Larry Houston at Procter & Gamble a few decades ago. And basically it goes like this. If you want to innovate something, think about what's needed, like what's needed, and then think about what's possible. Then you do fact-finding in between to match the needs and the possibilities. For example, if what's needed is a new medical treatment, maybe it's a treatment for slowing the aging process, because one of the things that I've discovered, and I think I'm probably a good example of it, is that aging is starting to be treated like a chronic condition that can be treated like a disease. Can't cure aging, but you can treat it and you can extend it. And my doctor is focuses on that, actually. So I'm kind of a beneficiary of age slowing lifestyle changes and supplements and other things. And as a result, I have like a health profile of people of someone in his 40s, and I'm in my 70s, and I feel more like I'm in my 40s. And this is going to be the norm at some point. So if you're thinking about what's needed to help slow the aging process? Well, then if you think about what's possible, first of all, you look around and find out if something exists today somewhere at a university or a company, and you either license the technology or you buy the company. Now, if that possibility, that solution doesn't exist at all, then you have to invent it. Then you have to go into research mode. Then you have to get a partner at a university or a company, or hire a team, or create a skunk works like the VIC-20, and you have to develop the solution. So the framework is this: if you want to innovate in any place, even in your own personal life, a solution to a problem in your life, think about what's needed, then think about what's possible now, and go get it somehow, or adopt it, or replicate it. And if it's not possible, think about what you have to do to create a solution. Maybe you have to change your life, change your company, change your focus, change the technology, change the app. And that's one framework. And then there's another neat framework, which I call an innovation map. And you have to read my book to see these, but I have innovation maps for self-driving cars and robots and lots of other things. An innovation map, like for robots, if you look at all the if you're going to innovate in robot, let's say I want to start a robot company. Let's say that. So where do I start? Well, first of all, take a picture of a robot, put it in the middle, and then make little sections for everything that would feed into that. The technology, applications, what's in science fiction. A lot of things in science fiction today are becoming science reality. And there's a lot of stuff in science fiction that can be made into reality, but people haven't realized that yet. That you see it on TV all the time. You see humanoid robots, for example. There are humanoid robots. There's a Professor Hiroki Ishiguro at Osaka University has created a humanoid robot that looks and talks and acts just like him, and he's slowly building his own personality into the robot. So when he dies, the robot will be essentially him, and if it has sophisticated enough machine learning, it could keep on learning forever and could become an immortal version of him. He wouldn't be immortal, but the version of him would be immortal.
Michael, when we started the talk, sorry for interrupting you. When we started the talk, you said, you can ask me anything you want. Did you not say this?
I did. Ask me anything.
Okay, so you want to build this robot. What face are you going to put on it? Would you put your own? Would you?
No, I didn't mean I didn't mean I want to build a robot. I meant hypothetically, if somebody says they want to build a robot, that's where they start. However, here's the cool thing. What if we could have done this with Einstein? And Einstein could be helping us with all these quantum physics things today.
Oh.
He could be a robot with his personality. He could have been learning all these things along the line as a robot. And generative AI is making this possible, along with sensors in the robot that allow the robot to read facial expressions, tone of voice, anger, all kinds of things. So robots can interact with it. At some point, we'll be interacting with robots like you see on television.
So like Professor Toshiguro, like we said, the guy from Japan.
Yeah.
It looks like him. So why wouldn't you have your robot look like you? And listen to me. Here, you gotta listen to my theory, my reasoning here. It's gotta have a tag, name tag that says the VIC-20 Czar. I'm not kidding. Would you be open to a VIC-20 Czar robot?
No, because the the concept of a czar is that's the behavior that some people and dictators in the world who are being slowly deposed this week, actually, the dictators have acted like czars. So I don't think I want to use the word czar, but whether a robot looks like, if I were going to invent a robot, I don't know if I'd make it look like me. I'd probably make it a lot more handsome and cool.
I don't know. Based on your laugh, I think you were really open to this idea. Rick Finger says, I believe that was the big reveal at the end of the third Terminator movie. Love it.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Okay, look, you had to use the word AI, and it's such a hot word right now in technology. Cheers. AI, right? Sora just came out this week.
Anybody
So
wants to know, this is sangria because it's a good Christmas wine. And this glass has Christmas decoration on it.
How do I know you're not AI generated right now?
You don't. I could just be sitting here just pulling your chain and making you think I'm real.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
What is your what do you believe about the simulation theory? Are we living in a simulation, yes or no?
No.
Why?
I have a lot of interesting personal beliefs. I believe there's actually something after death, and we don't understand what it might be. And the reason is, I personally have experienced so many quasi-supernatural experiences. So if you believe in God, you would call it God, and if you don't believe in God, you would call it something paranormal, I guess. But I have personally experienced things that are totally unexplainable that would be called supernatural if you were there. And that's happened since Vietnam. Just bizarre things that you can't even imagine. And it suggests to me, in my personal experience, that there's something after death. And so if that's the case, then we're not the simulation. We're something else.
Okay, Michael. Hi, Jessica. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jessica.
Tim, Stefan from Vienna.
Hi, Rick. Hi, Stefan. Hi, Stefan. How are you?
Come on, he's so shy. Say hello to the Vic Czar.
I know Stefan.
Okay, Michael, do you believe in UFOs, astral projections, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, spirit photography, telekinetic movement, full trance mediums, the Loch Ness Monster, and the theory of Atlantis?
I only believe in those things to the extent that I experienced them myself. I don't believe what people tell us, because look what happened with fake news. People have been telling us that this is true and that's true and this is validated and Trump is a Russian agent, and we had all this weird stuff going on, and it was all fake. So I don't, more than ever, starting a long time ago, I believe what my personal experience tells me.
What about crop circles, shadow people, cryptids, time travel, parallel dimensions, spontaneous human combustion, ancient aliens, time travel, ghost ships, Bigfoot?
Okay, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, which addresses your question.
Yeah.
3 years ago, my best friend Stan Casper and I were fishing on a party boat. We go ocean fishing about a dozen times a year. When I retired, my best friend retired with me, and I said, "What are we going to do now?" And he said, "Why don't we learn ocean fishing?" So we did that, and I had my first fishing pole when I was 3 years old in Wisconsin, where I was born. So one day, about 3 years ago, in the middle of the day, we were 30 miles from shore. And I put down my pole to change the rig, and I cut the line and was changing the rig. And all of a sudden, 30 miles from shore, a yellow goldfinch came and landed on my pole, which was propped against the railing, halfway down the pole, and started chirping at me, like talking to me. Not only that, but the yellow goldfinch let me stroke its chest feathers. And I was like petting this sparrow 30 miles from shore, and the goldfinch is a shorebird. So after a while, about 3-4 minutes, somebody made a loud noise and spooked the bird, and the bird flew to another part of the boat. And I turned to my friend as a joke, and I said, if that was a sign from God, another bird will land on my pole. And I thought that was funny as heck.
Wow.
At that precise instant that I said that, a red-headed sparrow landed on my pole, exactly the same place that the goldfinch was, started chirping at me, and let me pet it.
Wow.
And we looked at each other and we said, there is a God. God has a sense of humor. But
Yeah.
I can tell you 100 examples like that, where people who died, who kind of came and visited, and electronics went crazy and things happened that just the timing was couldn't be a coincidence. I've had so many experiences that I call supernatural, that I believe in God, although I also admit, number one, that nobody understands fully who or what God is, although people profess to, fundamentalists profess to. And also I'm very ecumenical. I think there's more than one religion has the same general concept of God. So many religions worship God, I think. God is the God of everyone. So, but I call it God. You could call it something else. Whatever it is, I've seen so many weird things that almost anything's possible. But until I see a UFO myself, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, there are UFOs, because Dr. Obsoleto told me he saw a UFO in his backyard.
Yeah. As well as the SUV-sized drones in Jersey the other night. Do you know that?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
What really, really should bother everybody about that is that the government authorities profess ignorance. How the heck can you be ignorant when even there's helicopters that came and hovered over one of the drones, and instead of following back to its origin, they went back to their origin and they said, oh, we don't know, we still don't know. Come on, that's just silly. How can somebody not? And by the way, we have drone weapons thanks to Ukraine, and actually Ukraine has developed some state-of-the-art drone weapons of their own. We could buy drones from them if we don't have them that are sophisticated enough. We can put up drones over New Jersey that can stay there 24 hours.
Oh God, I opened up a can of worms here.
And wait for these things. And when one appears, not much less 24 appear, but when one appears, you can just follow it back to the origin and say, oh, it's somebody in their home backyard bought a big drone and they're playing with it.
So going back to your question about your book, Neo Innovation, and I love this. So I'm not changing the subject or anything, but you talk about
my book. Let's promote my book more.
Science fiction, and AI. My one question is, and I'll wait till I give you the next one. My one question is, you said we didn't know where these phones came from, right? Now we've all have them. But didn't they talk about that in Star Trek with the communicators? Beam me up, Scotty, and then he put the thing down. I mean, did we watch that back in the day?
I wrote an article when I was at the Wharton School many years ago that's still very popular, and I keep getting notifications it's being read. It's called Turning Science Fiction into Science Reality.
Oh, okay.
Most, if not all, of the really cool technologies that we talk about and think about and invent had their start in science fiction. Isaac Asimov described humanoid robots and robots in general in I, Robot in the 1930s in a series of stories. That was 100 years ago. And now we're just starting to do humanoid robots 100 years later. I believe if you look in my book, it's what I call these impact maps. One of everything, whether it's generative AI or neo-medicine or nanoscale innovations, everyone should have a little block that says science fiction, because if you're going to develop an innovation, one of the first things you should do is look around in the world and do a search engine for that thing to see what's happening now. But the second thing you should do is you should search all the science fiction literature, which we can do now because we have great search capabilities. Search all the science fiction to find out what was envisioned by people, because a lot of that is possible now, but it hasn't been done yet because people aren't thinking about it, you know?
Yeah, all these technologies came from science fiction, but even Data. Remember Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Duh.
You know? Yeah, and he goes on the holodeck. So it's like, what reality is he in? Is this all one reality? It sounds like you think this is one reality. This is not a simulation.
No, I think that innovators dream and conceive of something that needs to be developed to solve a problem or exploit an opportunity, or just because the technology exists and you see the possibility, like a home computer. And science fiction writers, most of them didn't have the ability to invent it, so they wrote about it and they invented it on paper. And I think that's very cool. By the way, there's a distinction between innovator and inventor. An inventor has a new idea, a discovery, or a product or service or technology or application. But an innovator is someone who implements it to create value. An innovator is someone who takes a new idea, a new innovation, new something, and implements it to create value, whether it's commercial implementation or just in a lab somewhere. But the person who implements a new thing is the innovator. And this, I have a great example of this. Leonardo da Vinci was a great inventor, but he wasn't a great innovator. He invented the helicopter on paper. In that sense, he was kind of a science fiction artist, but he didn't make a helicopter. So he wasn't the innovator of the helicopter. He was the inventor of the concept. And there are lots of those around. People say, "Oh, we should do this," but they don't take any action. I think we live in a world where we have the ability and the wherewithal, even if we don't have any money, we can educate ourselves. Even if we don't have education or money, we can go online and teach ourselves about something and then go figure out where it is, and we can help innovate just by using it or going on a forum and making comments. Like when we go to Mars, we shouldn't send humans. Okay, you and I don't have to be NASA astronauts or engineers to say things like this. When we go to Mars, we shouldn't send humans there and have them assemble a habitat. We should send robots there.
There you go. That's
with a self-assembling habitat. And then the robots should have features that allow them to see if the oxygen runs out and when and how and what the problems are, radiation and so forth, and with sensors. And then we send humans, and we can do that. But you don't have to be an astronaut or an engineer to recommend that to NASA. And NASA was one of the very first organizations in the whole world that adopted something called open innovation. There's a management researcher named Henry Chesbrough who coined the term open innovation. It means a company or a government agency should involve customers, partners, fans, friends, family, hobbyists. Anybody who can possibly contribute should be involved in the innovation process. That's called open innovation. And because we have ubiquitous connectivity, we can talk. You and I can talk to anybody anywhere in the world, wherever they are on their smartphone today, right now, across time zones. And we can ask them, what do you think we should do on Mars?
Isaac Asimov said a robot may not harm a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm.
Also, Isaac said that the robot should defend and protect itself as long as it doesn't violate number one, hurt a human. It shouldn't preserve itself at the expense of a human safety or life. But you're right. That's what he said.
So between Boston Dynamics and SpaceX, can't we get some robots up there? You know, they talk about the Van Allen belt and how we can't, as humans, withstand the radiation to travel through that belt.
We don't even need robots. We just need to have a robotic habitat. The habitat should be able to be transported to the surface and then assemble itself. We have that now on Earth. We have self-assembling living structures. That should be easy to do on Mars. I mean, now there's another, let me give you another idea that I had. Why do you have to assemble habitats on the surface of Mars where you have radiation, periodic hurricanes, seasonal hurricanes, really, really strong hurricanes, and lots of dust and contaminants and things? Why don't you put the first habitat inside a cave, which is all automatically shielding away radiation and stuff? Find a great big giant cave, and you could start out by sending a little robot there who could spray paint the cave with some sealant and then put the habitat inside the cave, and away you go.
Unbelievable. We figured it out.
We don't have to be engineers to do that. That's why I have another thing that I say, and I always champion this phrase: anyone can be an innovator. Anyone can pose the solution to a problem. That's innovation.
Michael, is AI the new equalizer? I mean, doesn't this, Bill Gates was saying recently that it surpasses the home computing era, but can you really say that, or is it just an evolution?
AI is the enabling technology that will create what some people call the singularity. There are different definitions for singularity. My thinking about singularity is that technology and humans merge so that, for example, technology can give us superhuman abilities. There is an exoskeleton developed by Lockheed Martin called Hulk. It's an exoskeleton that a worker or a soldier can wear that allows the soldier to carry 300 pounds effortlessly, which means the soldier can carry ammunition or a heavy weapon like a machine gun without straining himself or herself. And that was done about 10 years ago. So a lot of this, there are paralyzed people right now that are wearing exoskeletons. By moving their eyes, their heads, doing some motion, maybe doing a voice thing, they can make the exoskeleton move. They can actually walk despite the fact that they're paralyzed from the neck down. That's been around for about 10 years. So if we extrapolate this and we say, do we want superhuman athletes? Do we want superhuman soldiers? There's going to be some choices. For example, would you rather have an army of soldiers that have superhuman capabilities, or would you rather have a robot army that has superior capabilities to a human and can survive better? Those are choices we're going to have to make.
In your estimation, when will we make it to Mars? I've heard estimates of 2032.
I think 2032 is a pretty safe estimate. I think the best person, I think if you take NASA's estimate, which is going to be farther out, and you take Elon Musk's estimate, which is going to be too optimistic, and you split the difference, I think that's the date I would bet on if I were going to bet in Las Vegas.
Okay.
I would split the difference between NASA and Elon. But we're going to Mars. That's pretty cool. And the first people may die or get cancer. Okay, think about this. One thing that bothers me right now about Mars, when astronauts spend half a year in space on the space station and they come back, they have to be assisted to the hospital so they can recover, so they can walk on Earth. Well, what about the astronauts, the colonists that go to Mars, they're going to be in the same shape when they arrive at Mars as the astronauts that come from the space station back here. They're not going to be able to walk, and they're going to have to exercise and get conditioned, and they may need hospital facilities, but that's not going to be available on Mars. So I'm not sure how that's going to be handled. There's another interesting side area that I'm just going to say this to spark discussion and thought. You know, Star Trek, Bill Shatner, I know Bill Shatner, and I have autographed pictures of him. He sent me some autographed pictures of him a few years ago. He's very cool. He's the nicest, coolest, neatest guy ever. I called his assistant a few years ago, and I said, "Do you think Bill would autograph a picture of me and him?" And his assistant said, "Oh, Bill remembers you very well." And he said, "Of course." So, and Bill said, "Send several pictures." So I sent a half a dozen pictures, and Bill autographed several of them. And I asked his assistant later on the phone, "Why did Bill autograph extra copies?" And she said, "Well, Bill thought you might want to sell a few and make some extra money."
So
That's
that's awesome. Can you tell us a story of, Shatner and you and the VIC-20 commercial?
cool. Around 1982, we hired an ad agency. We finally got professional. We hired a high-powered ad agency in New York, and they decided to make Shatner our spokesperson, which was perfect. And somebody had to go to the TV photo shoot, the video shoot for the video commercials, and I was the product manager at the time. So I took a couple of my team members, my Vic Commando, we call them Vic Commandos, and to New York, and we set up the Vic. We had to set up the computer so that the computer plugged directly into the TV system, and that the TV system then sent the signal back to the monitor. So the computer itself was not physically connected to the monitor, and many people who see pictures of me and Shatner by the computer notice that the computer is not plugged into the monitor. And the reason is it had to be rerouted through the system to prevent scan lines from forming. But anyway, Bill Shatner was the nicest guy. He was just cool, and he was just friendly. I had lunch with him. I actually turned out to be the first person to ever show Bill Shatner how to work a real computer, because all the computers in Star Trek were fake. So I actually showed Shatner his first computer, and then we gave him a Commodore computer system, which he used to do word processing. He wound up writing novels and scripts on Commodore computers. Wow. Is that neat? Nobody knows that. Yeah.
Wow. Which one did you give him?
Well, we gave him probably a CBM system, and I actually sent one of the Vic Commandos, went over to his house to set it up and show him how to use it.
Neat.
Yeah, really.
That is so awesome.
He's just the coolest guy.
Did you ever imagine meeting him, like getting this job? Did you ever imagine you'd be meeting Bill and Jack Tramiel and being a part of this computing history?
I have to be honest, I started out as a photojournalist and a newspaper photographer in college. So I got really used to taking pictures of celebrities for the newspaper and our yearbook. And so I'm writing my autobiography now. So throughout my life, because I started as a photojournalist, I habitually took pictures of any celebrities I encountered. And my autobiography has pages and pages and pages of layouts of famous celebrities that I met and photographed, rare unpublished pictures. And if you think Shatner and Jobs and Wozniak, by the way, I got to know Wozniak good enough that I could go and hang out at his cubicle when he was inventing stuff. And I would just sometimes when I was bored, I'd go down and hang out. But I'm not affected by celebrities. My autobiography, which I'm about 85% done with now, I have 2 publishers interested. It includes rare unpublished pictures of Bob Hope, Jim Nabors, Martha Ray, George Jessel, Billy Graham, Richard Nixon, Dick Gregory, Jane Fonda, Mick Jagger, all kind of people.
Nixon, I am not a crook.
I was in Korea working for a general one day, and I walked in. That's Jessica. That's funny. I walked in to the general's office, and he was really, really upset, and he slammed the phone down. And I said, "What's wrong, General?" And he said, "Oh my God, George Jessel is in Korea, and he's traveling around, and he thinks he's Bob Hope, and he's just raising all kinds of hell. I don't know how to handle it." And I said, "General, I used to be in PR. Just assign me to his entourage, and I'll make sure he's happy. I'll take pictures of him. I'll give him some posters. I'll make sure he's taken care of. He'll be happy as a clam. I know how to do PR, and I know how to deal with celebrities." And he said, "Okay, would you do that for me?" Yeah, he said, "Well, like this, would you do that for me, Michael?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'd be willing to do that." Heck, spend a week traveling with George Jessel, listening to stories from the 1920s from vaudeville. George Jessel turned down the role of the jazz singer that was the first talking movie, and he told all those stories, told us all kinds of neat stories about gangsters. One time a gangster came to him and asked him to come and do make some nice comments about somebody at a dinner. So they went to the dinner. Tom Watson or whatever. He told me the guy's name was like Tom Watson or something like that. So he went to the dinner. He he stood up and he said, "Well, I don't know Tom Watson, but I'm unlike Abraham Lincoln. Tom Watson did not free the slaves. Unlike George Washington, he's not the father of his country. However, given the opportunity, I'm sure he would have done the best he could." And that was exactly what Jessel told me. And that's what he said. And then they just hustled him off back to his hotel and gave him a case of champagne, this was during Prohibition. So they gave him a case of champagne. And he said it was worth its weight in gold. The next morning, he woke up and his assistant was jostling him awake. And he said, "What?" He said, "You won't believe it." He said, "What?" He said, "Look at the front page of the morning newspaper. Guess what it said? Tom Watson was murdered by the mafia." That was his farewell party that Jessel was asked to go to. That's one of the stories, one of the many stories. So one day Jessel says to me, "Let's go see Billy Graham." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Billy Graham's in town. He's doing a revival or something. Let's go over to his hotel, say hi." We went over, spent an hour and a half with Billy Graham and his wife, and I have pictures of the three of us with our arms around each other. One night I was in Jessel's room and he called Richard Nixon on the phone, and I sat on the bed while he talked to Richard Nixon for an hour. He was a friend of Nixon.
Interesting.
So when you say, was I impressed by meeting Jack or Shatner? I'm not impressed by any celebrity. I've met so many. They don't impress me. They're just not people.
So let me go back to the VIC-20. Thinking about Santa's wish list, the Dr. Obsoleto wish list of what could have been. Let's dream a little. What could have been in the VIC-20? First of all, I thank you, and I love the machine. It's my first machine ever. I still have it, and I got it for my birthday and Christmas that year.
Jeez.
So I love my VIC-20. But, as with anything that you love, you kind of think, well, what other accessories, what could have been different? What was going to be in it that didn't make it?
Okay, I have to admit, ever since 1984, when I left Commodore, almost once a month, my whole life, somebody in the world tracks me down, sends me a message or an email thanking me for fighting for the VIC-20 because they read my book, The Home Computer Wars, or they saw some interview thanking me because the VIC-20 changed their life. It got them into computers, got them into technology, made them get interested in school. I like almost once a month, somebody tracks me down and says, "Thank you for fighting for this. It changed my life." And I'll tell you, it doesn't make me feel like proud. It makes me humble. It's very humble. When I was growing up in Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Wisconsin is like a backwoods area of the world, and it's kind of a joke almost, because are you from Oshkosh? You know, it means you kind of backwater. So I grew up praying to God almost every day, please let me do something significant with my life. And I have to admit, at the age I am now, God has let me do several significant things with my life. And so God answered my prayer. Now, let me answer your question. What I thought the VIC-20 should evolve into, it did, because we did what I call the bear in the woods strategy. Somebody said, what's the strategy that you're doing with these computers? I said, it's the bear in the woods strategy. And they said, like, what does that mean? And I said, well, what do you do when a bear chases you in the woods? You take off your knapsack, you throw it down at the bear's feet, and the bear stops to look at the knapsack, and you either run away or scurry up a tree. So what do you do? And then what do you do when the Japanese are planning to come into the home computer area? Remember, they took over the home audio sector with the Walkman. Sony took over the TV industry, and they were ready to take over the home computer industry. We had to keep them out with the bear in the wood strategy. So after we did the VIC-20, we threw the $300 computer down at their feet, and they stopped and went into a 9-month planning cycle. And then we did the Commodore 64, which they were expecting a 32K computer. So all the Japanese were working on 32K computers. So we threw them a 64K computer. That's the bear in the wood strategy. They had to stop dead, cancel the 32K computers, and wait another year before they came in. And so we basically kept them out of the home computer sector of the market. The next thing after the Commodore 64 that I wanted and that I championed and that I fought for was the Plus4. The Plus4, I said, why don't we take the 4 main killer apps? Database management, graphics, word processing, and spreadsheet, and put those inside the computer. And people said, well, how do you update it if there's a glitch or there's something wrong or you need to update it or improve it like you do? And I said, we can do that on a dongle. You can have a plug-in dongle, like a little plug-in thing, and that'll be the updater. Whenever you want to update the software, it'll be built in, but then it'll get updated from a little dongle that you buy and plug in. And everybody said, fine. So Jack approved that. I worked on it. I don't make a big deal of it, but I helped work on that. And it was I was one of the people who had that idea and was pushing for that, because I was in the software division with Sig Hartman at the time. That was my last job, was to be in the software division that we created. We had like 70 software titles in 1 year that we did to make the computer sell better. So the thing was that I said, let's put the 4 killer apps inside the computer, and that was called the Plus4. Now in January 1984, we introduced the Plus4. We said, this is going to be, from now on, our computers are going to have software built in. It's going to be real cool. And you just turn it on and you use it. And that you don't have to buy software and update software, and you don't have to load software. It's already there. So the Plus4 came out, and then in January, Jack Tramiel had a fight with Irving Gould, the chairman. Some of the older gray-haired executives who were from the corporate world, none of them from the computer industry. They thought we should be more like IBM. They thought Jack was too much of a wildcat in the oil industry, and the wildcats type of management was no longer relevant. They said we should do professional management, and they persuaded Irving to maneuver Jack out of the company. So whether Jack resigned or was fired, it doesn't matter. Jack left the company. In fact, at the board meeting in January, when Irving announced this, Jack left the meeting halfway through the meeting. He didn't even wait for the meeting to end. And while the meeting was still on, he got on a plane and flew back to California.
Wow.
That's how mad he was.
Wow.
And the stock fell from $90 to $6.
Unbelievable.
I had $1 million worth of stock options that were worthless. In fact, they wound up being underwater. They were worth minus 250,000 instead of being worth $1 million plus. So all my hard work, I didn't make much money for it, but I
Damn.
wound up with a legacy, and I learned so many lessons from Jack and from the experience
Yeah.
that helped me my whole rest of my career, including today.
Michael, let me ask you this. How did they engineer this hostile takeover of Commodore and run Jack out? Was this Irving? Like, what?
Okay,
Who
Jack
orchestrated
made-
this?
Jack
You
made
got my blood boiling now.
Jack made a fatal error in June 1983. Okay, here's what happened. In the 1970s, we were a calculator and watch company. The Commodore calculators were among the first handheld digital calculators, along with the Pioneer, which was called Bomar. Bomar was the pioneer of handheld digital calculators. And a Commodore was like one of the leaders in the world in that. They used Texas Instruments chips to make the digital calculator. And then one day, Texas Instruments woke up and said, we're going to make our own calculators. So we're not going to provide chips to any competitors anymore. So they dried up the market for calculator chips. So they tried to put all the calculator companies out of business, including Commodore, which almost went bankrupt. Commodore had to go buy MOS technology and get vertically integrated to get chips so they can make calculators. And when he went to meet with Chuck Peddle, Chuck said, "Oh, by the way, you didn't buy just a chip company. We have a computer that we made from the chip," and that's how the PET got done. And then they decided, what should we call it? And they said, well, the PET Rock is very famous. Let's call it the Commodore PET. So PET Rock turned into Commodore PET, and then the PET Rock people threatened to sue them. Chuck Peddle told me this on a plane trip one time, and the PET Rock people threatened to sue them. So Chuck stayed up all night with the dictionary and studied what could you call PET if you put periods after it. P period. So if you look at the PET, it says P period, E period, T period, and it technically stands for Personal Electronic Transactor, because they didn't want to get sued by the PET Rock people. So anyway, to make a long story short, Jack nursed a decade-long grudge against Texas Instruments, and in 1983, the second largest home computer company was Texas Instruments. In spring 1983, our engineers back-engineered the TI 94, the TI 99/4 home computer, and they found out they couldn't make a profit at it. They had to be manufacturing it at a loss. There's no way they could make a profit on that computer, they said. So they must be making, because they weren't vertically integrated, so they must be making a profit on software and peripherals. So Jack said, easy, we'll cut the price of our software and peripherals in half, literally in half, and drive them out of business, because they'll have to match it, and they won't be able to make money because they're making money just on software. So basically, at the 1983 CES show in Chicago, he announced to the world that our software prices were being cut in half. Well, the good news was TI's consumer products president Bill Turner came storming into our booth. I was there. And he said, how can you do this? How can you sacrifice this? How can you lose money? There's more money to be made here. There's no reason to be doing this. You're cutting our throat. It's suicidal, Jack. Jack just looked at him and smiled, because Jack was getting his revenge for what happened in the 70s. Bill Turner, I had some friends who worked in the TI team. They told me what happened. Bill ran back to his booth, got everybody together, put him on a plane. This was the middle of the week, like a Wednesday, I think. They flew back to Texas. That Friday, they announced that, number one, he was resigning, and number two, TI was exiting the home computer sector. But two things happened. One, Texas Instruments dumped their computers on the market for under $100 just to clear out their inventory, and it killed the market that Christmas. The second thing that happened was all of our dealers that bought software at the old prices still had lots of software and peripherals sitting in their storeroom and on their shelves that they bought at higher prices. And in many cases, they paid wholesale what the new retail was. So they insisted on what was called stock balancing, which meant they either needed free product to make up for their loss or money. And in most cases, they got free product. So we had to give a whole bunch of free product in the Christmas quarter to our dealers to make up for the decision that Jack made to cut the software prices in half. And it hurt.
What year was that?
1983. So in the last quarter of 83, we got hit. We still did pretty good, but we got hit with a lot of complications, and the so-called professional managers who were mostly had gray hair. They came from Max Factor and Yvonne Picon fashion and department stores, and they had been brought in to provide some management in depth because we were now $1 billion company. We reached $1 billion in a calendar year.
Wow.
Before Apple did, actually. So basically, those gray-haired guys, they grew up with IBM computers, and they said we should become more like IBM. There it is, Jessica.
Oh man! Wow. Yeah.
So basically, they told Irving that Jack really needed to leave because we needed professional managers to take the company forward as $1 billion company like IBM. And so the first thing they did was they killed the Plus4. They killed the new generation of computers with software built in. They shut down our research divisions in Texas. We had a speech technology division and a robot division in Texas, experimental robot division in Texas, and they alienated the research group at our semiconductor facility in Pennsylvania, and everybody was either fired or left. And the gray-haired old guys, they convinced Irving that we could buy technology outside, and so they bought the Amiga computer, and they bought the Amiga, but we totally stopped inventing anything inside the company. Nothing was being invented at all, and we killed the culture. And when Jack left, the culture left, and the old corporate style guys, they basically put Commodore into a 10-year death spiral. Commodore's stock never recovered. When that happened in January, about 30 of us, what I call Commodorians, people who had Jack's home phone number in their Rolodex, we almost set a mental time clock. We said if things don't improve or get cool by the June CES show, we'll leave in May. And every one of us made that independent reckoning. None of us talked to anybody else. None of us knew the others were thinking the same thing. But in 1 week in May, 30 top managers, engineers, marketeers announced they were resigning in 1 week, including me. And we all did it independently. None of us talked to each other, and nobody. And you know what the gross thing was? Nobody tried to stop us. Nobody tried to keep us there. And so the corporate culture of the company resigned in 1 week, and nobody stopped us, and that killed the company. That really killed engineers, software programmer, everybody. Greg Pratt, who had been the president of the U.S. company, I left. So many other people left. Engineers left. The guys who did the sound interface chip, the sound chip at MOS, they left and created a company called Ensoniq, which did music synthesizers and became a market leader in music synthesizers. So all of this happened in 1 week, and that was it. And the Commodore died because Jack kind of caused it himself by dropping those prices to get even with Texas Instruments. He made an emotional decision. He didn't have to do that, but he wanted to get back at TI. He held a grudge, I think.
You said earlier that the Americans didn't want to work on the Vic. You guys had to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Why the resistance? I wanted to ask you this earlier. Why the resistance from the American engineers, and why did you have to go to Tokyo?
Oh, okay.
Nothing wrong with Japan. I love Japanese. Arigato.
Okay, first of all, it wasn't all the engineers.
Yeah.
But Chuck Peddle resigned and took some of the key engineers with him.
Oh.
So some of the fundamentals, and that's who didn't want to work on it. And so some of the fundamental things had to be done by Yashi Terakura in Japan, and then it was more logical to do a Japanese prototype. My job, when I talk to the engineers from MOS or from Santa Clara, John Fagan's, people like that, I always said, they would say, like, Jack said, we should ask you for guidance, and what should we do? And I said, well, programmable function keys, RS-232, IEEE, full-size typewriter keys, make it look attractive. But the most important thing is it has to be user-friendly. And then I said, that's my only guidance. Make it user-friendly. You do that, and you can do whatever the hell you want. And so when I was in Japan, the first thing I said to Yashi said, Michael-san, what do you have any ideas, advice, anything to tell me? And I said, yeah, you have to make the computer user-friendly. That's the only guidance. And Yashi looked at me with a big smile on his face, and he said, Michael-san, of course this will be a friendly computer. I am a friendly engineer.
Oh, that's where it comes from. Beautiful.
I love that quote. That actually,
Oh.
I can still remember his face when he said that to me. I was standing next to him at his desk, and he looked up to me and grinned like that.
Beautiful. That's that poster. Yeah, the friendly computer.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What?
I helped design the company. I hired an artist to do packaging and all kinds of things. We designed a lot of the packaging. We did a thing called, we did a Dracula game, and the artist made a drawing that looked too much like Frank Langella, who was playing a vampire in a movie. So we had to tone it down. But if you look closely, it still looks a little bit like Frank Langella. And so I worked with the artist that I hired to do all the graphics, and I also co-designed the poster.
That's awesome. Oh man, I had a question that I was going to ask about the VIC-20.
A lot of the packaging came from Europe.
Yeah.
I'm a very multicultural person. I'm very, but it's Stefan says I should mention. Okay, I was giving a whole bunch of interviews during the 1980s to any magazine, anybody who wanted to talk to me, I'd give an interview to and push home computing. And the editor of Byte magazine heard me say that so many times at conference. We were on panels together. We did articles, and he knew me really well. And one day he sent me a note, and he said, you know, there's a German word, Benutzerfreundlichkeit, which means user-friendliness. And I went, yeah. And he said, since you're Mr. User-Friendly, you should know that. I said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So I took the word Benutzerfreundlichkeit, and I put it on a brass plaque mounted on a wooden background about this big. And I wish I would have had it here. I don't have it handy, but it says Benutzerfreundlichkeit, official motto of the Vic Commando team. And then I gave it to each one of the Vic Commandos as a memento.
Oh, that's awesome. What did you think about the reception of the VIC-20 in Japan versus Germany? What was your perception of these different cultures outside of, America and Canada?
Well, after our first meeting in London, we didn't come straight home. We went to Germany, and Jack met with there's a +4.
There's Simon. Nice one. Nice.
We went to in Germany. The Vic had to be called VC-20 because Vic means F asterisk CK. And Vic, okay, so it's called VC in Germany, and then in Japan, Tony wanted to call it VIC-1001 because 2001 A Space Odyssey was a famous movie in Japan, very popular. So he wanted to capitalize on that. So he called it the VIC-1001 in Japan.
That's hilarious.
And so after we left London on our private jet, we had a pet jet. So we flew to Germany. We met with the German government, and there was an electronics factory that was going bankrupt. And Jack said, I want you to give me that factory. I want to take this factory. It's got 100 and some odd people. It's going bankrupt. We want to make Commodore computers here in Germany for Europe.
Beautiful.
And I want a whole bunch of breaks and benefits. And the Germans, government people, I was at the table. They said, why should we do this for you? And Jack said, because you owe it to me. I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was in Auschwitz, and you owe it to me. And number two, it'd be great PR for you. And the Germans looked at each other, and they went into a huddle, and they came back, and they said, yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow.
So that's how our our manufacturing facility in Braunschweig was put together there. And Jack met with the people in the factory. I was there. There were like 106 people or something. And he said, I understand some people may not like working for a Jewish owner. So if any of you holds a grudge or doesn't want to work for a Jew, you're welcome to leave. No hard feelings. 6 people walked out, but only 6. And later on, I asked Jack, because Jack and I had a great relationship. One time we were having a sandwich at a deli. I had a relationship with Jack that Jack said, your job will not be to be my assistant to the president. Your job will be to learn the religion. That's what he called his company.
Wow.
And he said, you follow me around and then until you learn the religion, and then you can do something. So he said, I just want you to follow me around. And I said, okay, but the deal is that I can come in and sit in on any meeting and listen in on any phone conversation anytime I want. And he said, okay. So I was wandering in and out of his office all the time. So here's the deal. So we were at Braunschweig. So when we got back to California, we had a sandwich at a deli. And I asked him, Jack, how do you deal with the memories of the Holocaust? Must have been horrible. It was like 6 years. And I said, how do you deal with the memories of the Holocaust? And without blinking an eye, he looked at me and he said, I live in the future.
Wow.
And at that moment, that slogan became my personal slogan.
Wow.
But when people say, what's your life slogan, Michael? I say, I live in the future. And they say, why do you say that? And I say, because my life I'm like a world-class innovator, and there aren't many of us left. We have to keep innovating till the day we die, because innovation is what makes civilizations evolve. So you have to keep innovating, and there aren't many people like Elon Musk. I'm not like Elon Musk, but I'm one of the innovators in the group that can do world level multicultural innovation, and I'm still doing it in fintech and blockchain and stuff. And we want to improve the world. And so I say, I live in the future, but the reason I say that is because I want to make the future happen faster. I want to turn science fiction into science reality. I want to keep doing this till the day I die. I want to keep improving the world by innovative uses of emerging technologies and applications.
Do you think AI is going to get us there quicker? Somebody recently said that Einstein had an IQ of 160 and ChatGPT has an IQ of 300. Now, when I ask ChatGPT, it refuses to give me a number for its own IQ, but when I force it to, it says it's around 160.
I think AI is being overblown due to how we think about intelligent machines. AI, okay, consumer electronics in every dimension follows a trajectory. The reason Jack was so good at computers is because he understood the evolution of consumer electronics. Mechanical adding machines, electromechanical adding machines that were built into, that were plugged into the wall, electronic handheld calculators, cordless electronic calculators, and I could go on digital calculators, and then computers, and computers became laptops and then merged with phones and smartphones, and there's an evolution. So if you take AI, you're going from programs to self-correcting software programs to voice synthesis and voice recognition, to pattern matching, to machine learning. And if you follow that trajectory on, then you wind up where AI is just a farther along innovation in the trajectory of smart devices. From smartphones and smart computers and smart things, we are now doing smart computers on a level that didn't exist before. And we're adding human emotions, natural language, robots. We're doing convergence with sensors. Sensors in robots and computers can now read the human face and our expressions, and can kind of tell or guess what we're thinking based on our expressions, if we look sad or happy or whatever. And that's just part of the evolution of smart devices, in my opinion. I think we're just into smarter than ever devices, and they're taking the form of what we call generative AI. Now, whether that becomes androids like Data in Star Trek, probably, but there are so many cases of fraud, and there are systems now that can take somebody's face and mimic them and replicate them, and it looks like them, and you think it's them, and it's not them, and they're committing fraud doing that. They're making parents sad and upset because their children or relatives or husband are calling them, or wife is calling them in a video chat, but it's an AI. And so there's a lot of perversion in AI right now, and that has to be somehow dealt with. So I'm not too excited about it now, because it can be twisted so easily. It has to reach a point where it can't be twisted. Okay, think about this. We now have the ability to make software and banking and apps robust and pretty secure and fraud-proof and tamper-proof and hack-proof. But we need to be able to do that with AI, and we're not there yet. That's what's going on.
I think that you froze a little bit there. The beauty of the Commodore is that it's timeless, and even with all this new technology, it still gives us an opportunity to step back in time. So
not only that, but the legacy of Commodore, what it means to be a Commodorian. It means you keep inventing something to make it as best as it can. You keep solving problems. You don't stop. You try to help the world. You try to use technology to improve the world. You try to make it affordable. Jack said, I want to make computers for the masses, not the classes. And that we talked many times about elementary schools and poor families couldn't afford computers before the VIC-20. So we made it possible for everybody to afford a computer. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to help poor people in small elementary schools that couldn't afford to even have it in the classroom. And that was a social thing. And I think the same kind of thinking and those lessons and those insights from the Commodore experience apply today. And I think the reason so many people want to hear my story is because breaking rules, fighting for things that people opposed, forcing things to happen, working 24/7, involving young people, because young people don't know what can't be done. If anybody out there is sitting in a group that has all people with gray hair, you better get some young people in there, because gray-haired people know what can't be done and they have rules. Young people have no rules and they don't know what can't be done. And they're also closer to the technology because the technology is new and they're familiar with it because they grew up with it and they're growing up with it. So I believe that young people should be involved in all product groups, development groups, marketing groups, any context in any society. And most people don't think like that, but that's one thing that should happen. And those are some of the lessons from Commodore, and they still apply today.
So Elon Musk was recently asked what students should be studying, and he said physics and computer science.
Yeah.
What are your areas that you think people should be studying these days?
I think everybody has to know how. Okay, I believe the things that radical disruptive innovations are doing for us now, they're allowing us to communicate better, to connect ubiquitously with anybody anywhere, and to collaborate. The communication part was already taken care of. And I think, there's some neat things that happen with communications. Starlink, Elon Musk put in a network of low-level internet satellites, which gave us fast internet because internet was either slow or breaking down or interrupted and telecommunications were not reliable. But when he put in this network of literally dozens of low-level satellites is what makes the internet now as fast and reliable and high volume as it is, which then in turn enables cloud computing, which cloud computing means that enormous databases are now available. For example, if you're in a self-driving car, there's maybe 1,000 obstacles that could cause an accident, but there are 1,000 images times some factor in a cloud somewhere that the car can access so that it can tell that a yellow flashing sign that a construction worker just put in the road is not a little kid in a yellow raincoat running out in front of the car. You have to be able to distinguish that. And communication, ubiquitous communication and fast communication combined with cloud computing and fast access to big data is making that kind of smart device possible. And then connectivity is cool because I work with programmers. Our little ventures, we work with programmers in India and Bangladesh and other countries. The best programmers in those countries are working with us. And you know why? Because we're connected. We can go in a Zoom meeting and talk to programmers in other countries. We can get the very, very, very best programmers in Bangladesh who are better than some of the best programmers in the US or some of the programmers that would be out of our price range in the US. And we can work with them. And we also help provide employment opportunities in Bangladesh and Malaysia and India and places like that, where people are very good at this stuff, but they don't have a place to get a job at a high level venture. You can do that now thanks to connectivity. And then the last one is collaboration. We can collaborate with anyone, anywhere. And when we do a brainstorming meeting, we don't have to just brainstorm with people in our time zone or our culture. We can brainstorm with people from many time zones, many cultures, many backgrounds, and that creates a rich ideation culture where you can generate new ideas and things from diversity. And I'm a big believer in that kind of diversity. So I think the 3 C's are what innovation is driving now, and that are the beneficiaries: communication, connectivity, and collaboration. Somebody asked if I'm going to re-release or republish my book, The Home Computers Wars. No, I'm working on an autobiography, which the largest section of the autobiography is about Commodore. So I kind of update the Commodore story and include just what I think is salient and important. So I'm not going to republish the Home Computer Wars, but I do include a large section on Commodore in my autobiography, which is about 85% done.
Any other questions from our guests here?
My autobiography includes photo layouts of Mick Jagger and Richard Nixon and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Dick Gregory and George Wallace, the stupid racist governor, and lots of other people. Shatner, yeah, Shatner, of course.
Where can we buy your autobiography?
I'm still working on it. I have two
Oh,
publishers.
you're writing it.
I have two publishers interested right now.
So I have a question about your time at Commodore.
Yeah.
So I know you were the czar of the VIC-20.
It's Jack called me the czar. I
Yeah.
never actually thought of myself as a czar. I thought of myself as a champion, more as a champion, driving to make something happen that a lot of people actually didn't want to happen, you know. And I just forced it to happen. I just refused to take no, you know. Innovators, if you want to innovate, if you want to be a radical innovator, you have to break the rules. You have to ignore everybody, you know.
So I think you said you left Commodore in '83. So I was wondering, like, what you did there.
No, I left Commodore in May of '84.
So what was your role at Commodore after the VIC? Did you work on the Commodore 64?
I helped on the we did something called the Programmer's Reference Guide, which Andy Finkel on my who I hired, who was on my team, Neil Harris. He was a friend of Neil Harris, and so Andy edited the Programmer's Reference Guide, which was provided all the technical inside information, addresses and things of where things were, to help software programmers so we could have a vibrant software community. So we did something that nobody had ever done. We opened our technical shirt to the external software community, and then I helped work on the the Commodore 64 Programmer's Reference Guide, and I then went into the software division. Sig Hartman, who was a longtime friend of Jack, and then I also worked on the Max machine. I did a lot of product management work on the Max machine, and then I turned it over to Bill Wade, and the Max machine had a flat membrane keyboard. The Max machine was supposed to be introduced, and we did a full color brochure. We did, I think, 100 or more prototypes. It had a flat membrane keyboard. I didn't like it, but I worked on it grudgingly. It was supposed to be a game computer. It was something to sort of compete with Clive Sinclair and things like that in that category. So I did some product management work on the Max. I guess I was technically the product manager for a little while there, and then I turned it over to Bill Wade, and then when it was introduced, it had such a bad reception that it was canceled. So there's actually a full color brochure and I think a few dozen Max machine prototypes, although it was never commercially produced. That's the answer.
Very cool. I love the Commodore 64 Programmer's Reference Guide. It's still useful today.
Yeah. Somebody just asked, what do I think the trajectory would have been if Jack would have stayed with the company? Jack had promised me that in 5 years he'd make me a vice president, and he always kept his word and never had to write anything down. So at the beginning of my 5th year, I would have been a vice president. I think we would have been a major player in the laptop area. We would have been one of the laptop leaders. But I think we would have had software built into the machine. We would have been a pioneer in integrating software into the machine. Of course, if Jack had not left, we would not have bought the Amiga. So the Amiga was a good thing because the Amiga helped a lot of people do a lot of things. So I think the Amiga was one of the benefits that came out of Jack's leaving, but it was one of the few benefits.
So one more question. I hope it's not out of line. But,
Anything. You can ask me anything about anything.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how responsible was Irving Gould for Commodore falling apart?
90%.
Uh-huh.
I blame him. Now, in 1994, I was trying to figure out what to do. I had been a chief operating officer for a venture that was started by some NASA scientists in Virginia, and I thought NASA scientists, that's pretty cool. And they had the gateway patent on classroom networking. If you connected calculators or laptops or handheld palm top computers, like HP had a palm top computer, if you networked those in a classroom, you could give a quiz or a test, and the students could enter their stuff there. And they had a software package called Class Talk. And Harvard University had it in their physics department in like a 300-person lecture hall. And I was chief operating officer. We did strategic partnerships with Microsoft, with Hewlett-Packard, with lots of people. We actually went down, and for a fee, we took our engineers to Texas Instruments, and I helped negotiate a deal where we would help Texas Instruments network their calculators, so their calculators could be used as input devices in classrooms to answer quizzes and stuff. And then the teacher would have a laptop, and then the students would enter their answers to their questions for quizzes and things, which was pretty cool because it meant that teachers could find out if students weren't learning something by giving some quizzes during the course instead of waiting till the final exam and finding out that half the class didn't get something. Then it's too late. So it really helped education. So I was chief operating officer for about a year. And at the end of the year, I said, I'm going to go do something. So I did 2 things to look for a job. First, I went to the Wharton School and I asked Jerry Wind, a faculty member I met there, what do you think I should do next in my career? And Jerry said, well, why don't you come here and do something? Jerry's Israeli. Jerry says, well, why don't you come here and do something? And I said, like what? And he said, well, look around, see what we're hiring for, and we'll hire you for that. Well, that's the first and last time I ever heard anybody given that offer. But I took him up on that, and I became the managing director of the Emerging Technologies Program. At the same time, I went to see Irving Gould in 1994, like early 1984. Maybe March or April, I can't remember the date. And I went to see him in New York. I was going to propose myself as chief operating officer for Commodore to save the company. And as chief operating officer, I felt I could certainly do that. And I went to see Irving, and I proposed all that. I said, I'd love to work for you. But Irving didn't see me as a chief operating officer. I had been a senior vice president at Cigna. I'd been a chief operating officer for a NASA company. I was doing workshops at the CIA and the NSA and pharmaceutical companies, and I was doing innovation thing. And I was a consultant. I headed my own consulting firm for 10 years. Instead of seeing me as a senior manager, he still saw me as a product manager, and he kept me waiting for 2 hours or 3 hours until somebody came up from Valley Forge, and they showed me a 64-bit game computer, game device, like a Nintendo, that they were planning to introduce. And when I asked the product team what they knew about Commodore's history, nobody had a clue.
Wow.
All the corporate memory had been erased. Nobody even knew what the PET was or the VIC-20 was. Nobody knew anything. I was chagrined. So I just shook my head and left and never went back. I just said, no, thanks. And I think 2 months later, they declared bankruptcy. But I could have helped save them, actually. But you can't force people to do things.
So one of the last questions here.
Yes, Kenneth, yes. I like to go fishing on Lake Ontario, and I like fishing. You pay my way, I'll come to Canada.
So from all your knowledge from business school and, Tramiel brought Irving Gould on when, he had the typewriter company. What does that teach you? That your downfall is going to come from within? And that's a little cynical, but.
No.
No?
Jack caused his own downfall. Jack made a fateful decision based on a grudge he held against TI, and he never should have done that. And if he was more rational, he wouldn't have. But he was very rash sometimes. Oh, by the way, I'll tell you a funny story. Jack was very tough in meetings. Jack would yell, and he had a deep, booming voice. He was short. He was built like a watchmaker. He could put his hand in his belly, in his belt like this. He had a little round tummy, and he was balding, and he had a deep, booming voice like this. And the walls would like vibrate when he was excited. And so meetings with Jack was called a Jack attack. So because he would belittle people. He would look at somebody and he would say, "You don't know what you're talking about. You used to be a teacher and you still want to teach. You don't want to do. You want to teach." And he would like insult people like that. So after a particularly and Jack, I always sat next to Jack. I was like his right-hand guy. So I always sat normally on the left side of Jack while he was ranting and raving. And Jack would do this. Jack would go, and he'd look at me. He'd look at me and glance at me and go, huh? Huh? And he'd go, and he'd go, huh? Like, how am I doing? Is that fun? Is that cool? Did I do it good? And did I beat him up enough? He would like glance at me and chuckle or wink at me. Or he'd look at me and wink at me. He'd like, and he'd go, huh? And that happened a lot. One time, there was a really, really, really strong meeting where he was in a rage. And I was sitting next to him, and some of the rage was directed at me for something I'd done that he didn't approve of or didn't like, or he wanted me to change. And he started in on me, and he was beating me to death. And I just looked at him calmly. And when I was done, we went in the hall, and the Vic commandos came around me like a bunch of meerkats. And they said, Michael, how could you do that? I said, do what? They said, Jack was attacking you. Jack was all over you. Jack was swearing at you. Jack was pounding the table. And you're just calm like glass. How can you be calm in a situation like that? How can you do that? And I looked at him and I said, well, to be perfectly honest, I was in combat in Vietnam. And as long as nobody's shooting at me, I'm fine. Which is true. I took karate in college, and in karate, I became very, what's the word? Kind of fearless. I jumped out of airplanes in college. I took karate. People say, what did you learn from karate? And I said, I gained a weird trait. I lost my fear of death. I totally lost my fear of death. Any dangerous situation, I'm just calm as ice, including Vietnam combat jumping out of airplane. I jumped out of airplanes, helicopters, and jet for a year at Fort Bragg. I was the public information officer, and I parachuted every week, and I loved it. I've been in the jungle. I've hugged sharks. I have pictures of me hugging moray eels, sharks, and stingrays underwater because I just get along well with animals.
You're like Indiana Jones. I love to see your photos of the fish and the fossils. Yeah. What? Yeah. How old are some of your fossils that you found?
Three. The oldest ones are Ordovician fossils, 400 million years old.
Wow.
I also have some Devonian fossils, which are 250 million years old. And those are interesting because I found some very rare sites in Pennsylvania and New York that had plant fossils from the Devonian era when plants were just beginning to evolve. Most of my fossils are 306 million years old from a place called St. Clair, which was what they call a coal swamp. It was a swamp of fern trees. In those days, there were fern trees, and ferns grew from seeds, not spores. So there was a hurricane apparently, and all the trees fell down in the swamp. They all got buried in the mud, and all the leaves and branches and stems and vines and all the different kinds of plants were preserved in a shale pit, and they became fossilized. They are white fossils on a gray background, which is a rare thing in fossils because they were fossilized and mineralized by aluminum silicate, and some of them are orange because they were fossilized by iron. So I have big giant fossils with orange fossils or mostly white fossils. And here's the cool thing. The leaves of the fossils from St. Clair and from Carboniferous sites are pristine. They are not rotted in any way. And you know why the leaves don't rot? Why they're perfectly outlined? They look almost like they were painted there. Do you know why they're so well preserved? Because the bacteria that causes leaves to rot had not yet evolved. It's such a great bit of trivia. So my fossils are like perfectly preserved leaves from the Carboniferous era 306 million years ago.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining us. We love you.
You want to follow up with any questions, you're welcome to collect questions and send me a bunch of questions that I will respond to, and then you can post them wherever you like if you think that would be of value. I'm very happy to do that because a lot of people, they didn't have a chance to like interact, and that's one way to keep going.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll take questions, and you know, if there's any last question right now, speak now. Otherwise,
this is a pleasure. I thank you, Dr. Obsoleto. Thank you very much. This is a very nice thing. I only accepted 2 podcast invitations this year, and I'm not planning on accepting any more because I have a very busy schedule, and I'm involved in many things, writing and companies and things, and so this was one of the 2 that I thought were most valuable and most meaningful because I love my friends in Canada, and I have many fans and friends in Canada and Italy, and those are the 2 places I accepted podcasts from.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael.
It's my pleasure.
Merry Christmas and Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas to you. Happy New Year to you.
And Jessica and everybody, Stefan, Tim,
Jessica,
Ben.
Thanks, Michael and Nico.
Stefan,
Thank you so
everybody,
much.
all the TPUG guys and gals.
Kenneth.
I like your hat, Jessica.
Thanks. I'm feeling naughty.
I love it.
Hey,
No.
Jessica, what did you have plugged in the VIC-20 there?
Jeff.
Just
Thanks,
I
Jeff.
might feel nice later.
nice or
Oh,
naughty?
the cartridge in my Vic?
Yeah.
That's my back bit cartridge. Yeah, I have a back bit. It's like super handy cartridge that works on multiple systems. So you just need an adapter for each system. So I use the same cartridge on my Atari 8-bit, on the VIC-20, on my Tandy Coco. So
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
Send us
check it
the
out.
link. Do they still make it?
yeah. I'll paste the link in the chat.
Look, it's people. See, people are still innovating because of Michael and all these amazing engineers at Commodore.
Okay, I'll leave you with a joke. This is a Christmas joke. Are you ready?
Yeah.
How do you kill a blue elephant? A blue elephant gun. How do you kill a pink elephant?
A pink elephant.
Elephant gun.
No, you hold his nose till he turns blue, and then you kill him with a blue elephant gun.
Thanks, Dad.
Merry Christmas. Corny.
Merry Christmas. Of course it's corny.
Oh, that's
You know,
cool.
if it weren't for half the people in the world, the other half would be all of them. I have lots of those. I'm serious. Don't expect me to be serious.
No, it's good. It's goofy.
Love a good dad joke.
Thanks. Yeah, people call these dad jokes. How do you put an elephant in a refrigerator? You open the door, you put the elephant in, you close the door. How do you put a giraffe in the refrigerator? You open the door, you take out the elephant, put the giraffe in, you close the door. Now, in the Lion King movie, the Lion King introduced the little boy to all the animals in the jungle except one. Which one did he not introduce and why? The giraffe, because it's still in the refrigerator.
Uh-huh.
Is that fun?
That's funny.
It's Christmas. We're supposed to have fun.
Oh, I didn't get to ask you. I know we were going to end it, but what do you want?
No, it's okay. We don't have to end it.
Michael, what do you want for Christmas? Tell Santa.
God. Actually, this Christmas, it's a funny thing. I decided there's nothing I really want for Christmas this Christmas. I have most of what I want. Oh, I know. Okay, I don't want it for Christmas. How about New Year's? Next year, 2025.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll do this. I got divorced a couple years ago for good reasons, and we got emotionally disconnected because of COVID, and we couldn't do anything we normally did, and we decided the best thing would be to separate. And also, she was much younger than me, and I said, you should reset your life like a computer. So, but that's not the important point. The day after that, I wrote on a piece of paper what my 2025 life goals would be. Number one, act the age I feel, not the age I am. You can see I'm doing that already. Number two, have fun. Number three, make money to pay for the fun. And number four, and this answers your question, find somebody I'm wildly attracted to create and share fun romantic adventures with. And that's what I want for 2025.
Yeah, I think I knew the answer to that question. You want some romance, but I want to find someone to share adventures with, and that is automatically romance, not just romance for the sake of romance, but someone that I can share things with, and let's use the word pamper. Well, I agree with Stefan. He says you don't want anything because you already have a VIC-20. I agree. Well, come on.
I feel very blessed. I'm very lucky, I must say.
So, Nico, you were asking about that cartridge.
Yeah.
So this is it. I just pulled it out. So this.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
So this is the back bit cartridge itself, and then this is the VIC-20 adapter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I have a number of these adapters, and
Cool.
it works out really well because I can use the same SD card on all my systems.
Wow.
Oh, so you can load programs on it. The back bit.
Right.
It's important that people keep this software and the hardware alive. You know, as Six recently told me, he's a coder. He said, Commodore, all the software and all the hardware, it's our shared cultural heritage.
Yes.
What do you, any thoughts about that?
I think I would use the word legacy.
Legacy. Like what Jessica just showed us, how it's continuing.
Okay, we derive a lot from legacies. We have a patriotic legacy. We have medical legacy. We have a computer legacy, and we draw energy from that somehow. It's hard to explain.
Keep showing it. I just want to keep seeing that Vic as Michael talks. It's like a dream
Yeah.
world. It's like
Okay.
It's neat, isn't it?
I'll
Isn't,
build it here.
isn't
the-
the design exquisite? I mean, even
Oh.
today, by today's standard, look
Look at
how
that.
great. I like the one with the mustard colored function keys, though.
Oh, I might have one like that. I have several picks.
Yeah, I like the mustard colored function keys.
Yeah. This is my daily driver.
Oh. Isn't that beautifully designed? That's just gorgeous to me. Even today, I just like, that's like a sculpture. To me, that's like a sculpture. That's like so cool. It's like a piece of art. Yeah.
Where did you get the 20 as a lucky number from when you told Jack Tramiel?
Okay. Jack said, at first we were going to call it the Commodore Spirit, and everybody agreed to that, including Jack. And
Yeah.
then suddenly I got a frantic phone call from Tony Tokai in Japan. And Tony said, Michael-san, you can't call it Spirit. I said, why? He said, Spirit doesn't mean Casper the Friendly Ghost like America. Spirit means flesh-eating, soul-stealing ghoul from hell in Japan. You can't call it Spirit. And I went, really? And so I said, oh, God. So I went, okay. Well, originally we were going to call it the VIC. And Jack originally was going to call it the VIC because of video interface chip. So I said, okay, let's call it the VIC, but so Jack, I said, we're going to call it the VIC-20, Jack. And Jack let me choose the price and everything about it. I was really the product manager. So I said $299.95. And Jack actually said, why $299.95? Why not $300? And I said, because $299.95 psychologically feels closer to $200 than $300. And Jack said, oh, okay. And then Jack said, why VIC-20? And I said, because Vic sounds like a truck driver and 20 is a friendly number. And Jack just looked at me and said, oh, okay. And I said, 5, 20, 100, those are friendly numbers. So I choose 20. He said, okay, just like that. That's the reason. Any other question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
How much was this marketed at, the plus 4?
God, I don't even remember. It's been so long, and I wasn't involved in the marketing of the plus 4. I was involved in the product development of the plus 4, and I helped choose some of the stuff. I worked on the Magic Voice, the voice synthesizer. I actually defined the vocabulary for that. Rich Wiggins, who was the inventor, asked me if I would do the vocabulary. So that was one of the things I did. And then for the plus 4, I specified the 4 apps that we should have: word processing, spreadsheet, graphics, and database. And but I didn't follow through on it because by that time I was helping to start the software division.
Okay. I just love the size of it and the shape of it. It just I never grew up with this, but I picked it up later. I grew up.
I
with
loved
the
it.
64.
I thought it was a killer, and I was going to go forward with it and be involved, making software for it and doing other things that it could do other things. But the so-called professional managers killed everything when Jack left.
Yeah.
They thought we should be IBM.
Yeah.
Whoa, Kenneth, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Shatner is the most fan-friendly celebrity I've ever met in my entire life. He's just fan-friendly. He's so cool. He's as cool as you think he is online. He's just that cool in person. He's just super cool. He's just like a treasure, He is like a science fiction version of Fred Astaire. I worked in Beverly Hills for 3 years when I was getting my MBA at UCLA. And I saw Fred Astaire walking down the street one day, and he was walking like he dances. He danced like he walked, and he looked like he danced. And I saw Fred Astaire wearing a blue trench coat, walking down the street toward me, and I swear it looked like he was dancing. It's the only time in my life that I was ever affected by a celebrity. My jaw literally hung open, and I went like that. I just stared at him, watched him go by.
Stefan wants to know, when is the last time you used the VIC-20?
Long time ago. I can't even remember. It's been so long. I now use, at some point along the way, I started using my smartphone as my laptop, and I do word processing. I write articles. I do a lot on my smartphone. I'm amazed how much I do on my smartphone. Before anybody was even doing that, I was using my smartphone like a laptop. I was thinking my smartphone became my laptop because I use it that way so much. I love having a portable smartphone with me.
There he is.
Oh, neat. Oh, that's priceless.
Space, the final frontier.
Oh,
There you go. Nice photo.
Oh, that's a treasure. Kenneth, that's a treasure.
Nice.
Oh, that's cool.
You gotta get that framed. Yeah, nice.
He's just as cool in person as he seems on TV, as you see him in interviews and stuff. He's so cool.
What do you think about the emulation? Have you checked it out or seen any emulation of any of the Commodore systems on Raspberry Pi, or what are your
No,
thoughts?
but I heard somewhere that at some point Shatner was inputting information and interviews and historical things somewhere so that you could create a virtual Shatner online at some point, maybe after he dies. But I haven't heard anything about that for more than a year. But at some point, that project was being attempted.
Amazing.
Which that's the future, you know. In the future, you're going to do it. Do you know? In 1982, I was on a panel discussion at a consumer electronics show, and people said, "What do you think is going to happen in the future?" And I said, "In the future." I said, right now, things are being digitalized. And that was when people hadn't realized that everything was going to be digitalized. And I said, things are going to be digitalized. And the implication of that is, after John Wayne dies, you will be able to take a digital version of John Wayne and make a whole new movie with John Wayne. And that didn't happen. But after John Wayne died, a couple of years after he died, they made a beer commercial with him. And they did that. They digitalized him, and they made him act like they made a John Wayne image in a beer commercial. So that actually came to happen.
Ben was showing his red case. Yeah, nice.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Ben, that's cool.
Actually,
Is that a Vic or 64?
it's a Vic.
Nice.
You know, I can't tell you how gratifying and how heartfelt my personal gratitude is to see so many people keeping alive the interest and legacy of a product that I helped design. I think that's just so gratifying to me. That's I can't tell you how that touches me, all of you that are doing this. It's very, very poignant for me. I have to be honest.
it's really important. Yeah, it's really important. You know, people's cases break. You know, they want to do a repair. They want to modify it. They take such great care of these machines.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a personal attachment. You
Yeah.
know, there's a personal attachment to my VIC-20. I've got it. You know, it's stored away in a climate controlled area. It's got a blanket over it.
Jeez.
And when I open it, I think of it as my baby.
Mhm.
I love my VIC-20. So people have these, you know, emotional attachments to it.
You know, here's another interesting story. The reason I became a writer, I had my first typewriter when I was 11 years old. I could read when I was 3 years old. My mother read books to me when I was a baby, so I could literally read books that. And I learned to break rules in first grade. In first grade, I had gone to the second grade classroom, and I got permission to take any book from the second grade library, and they had books on dinosaurs and the solar system. So I had a book on dinosaurs, and so one day we finished our workbook exercise in first grade, and I took out a book and I was reading this book. And then all of a sudden I felt my ear tug, and the teacher was tugging my ear very painfully. And I went, oh, and the teacher said, stop that. And I said, stop what? She said, stop reading. I said, what do you mean? And she said, finish your workbook. And I said, I already, by the way, this is the story of how I learned to break rules. Okay. This is a cool story. So I said, I already finished my workbook. She said, then do the supplemental exercise. And I said, but I already did them. And she said, then she said these fateful words, then sit quietly and wait for the rest of the class. And those words were like a dagger through my heart, because I was 20 minutes ahead of the class. And I wasn't going to sit there in first grade and wait for 20 minutes. So I said, okay. So I learned to open my desk like this. It opened like this. So I learned to open the desk, hold it with my head, read a page of the book, close and rummage with my hands, pretending I was looking for something, close it and sit for a minute or two and do it again. And that's how I learned to rapid read. And then I discovered that sometimes I was bored with the material because I already knew it and I was pretty smart. So I would go, excuse me, Miss Carpenter, could I please get, I have the hiccups. Could I get a glass of water, please? Just be a minute. I can still fake a hiccup. So in first grade, I learned to fake a hiccup so I could go outside and I would wander up and down the halls for a while. Do you know who's outside in the halls in first grade, in second grade, and third grade? All the bad boys. The naughty boys are made to stand in the hall. So I would go and talk to all the naughty kids and look at the bulletin boards. And one of the bulletin boards I saw was a cartoon of a little Indian pointing a bow and arrow toward the sky. And the slogan I never forgot, and I remember it to this day, and I think about it often. The slogan on the poster said, aim high, then if you miss, you land pretty high anyway. Is that cool?
That's cool.
And that stayed with me my whole life. That's like from first grade. Is that hilarious?
That's hilarious.
That's how people say, how do you learn to break rules? How did you become a rule breaker? And I said, well, hiccups. They go, hiccups? And then I tell that story. So
Any last words of wisdom for these young budding engineers who are living in the COVID era, as you said in your book? And this is the last question. Any words of wisdom?
Anyone can be an innovator. You can be an innovator by reading about it, by learning about it, by reading science fiction and watching videos, by trying to make the future happen faster, by becoming an early adopter of something new, by embracing change, and by doing whatever you can in any small way to, number one, make the world a better place, and number two, stay positive and optimistic and cheerful no matter how good or bad your life may be. I had a couple of bad spots this year, but I maintained my cheerful, optimistic outlook and demeanor and got me through, and then everything started turning up and got good again. So I have to tell you that stay optimistic, stay positive, stay enthused, and do something to pamper yourself and those you love.
Awesome. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Thank you very much, Michael.
Merry Christmas. Thank you for involving me in this. I enjoyed it so much.
Pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
My friend.
God bless.
God bless. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Happy holidays to everybody.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Yep.
Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy New Year.